All right, dear Fahim, let's review your submission, dear. Okay, so this is our first attempt in the software after planning. Okay, I've already had a look. Let me play it once again so that we see it together. All right, let me go it once again. All right. Okay, first I'm going to mention the things that I feel if I had a general look at the thing, general look at the animation, then we'll go into detail, right? So if we play it, the major things that strikes or that hits the eye, I'm going to mention that first. Alright, the primary thing that normally freshers make the mistake is that if it's rolling on the table, the moment the table ends, the table finishes, people feel that the ball is going to stop and then fall vertically. That's what we are doing here. It's not like that. It's in momentum. So in X, it's not going to apply brake. It has to keep moving. So what's happening is Y is starting to move down, but X is not applying any brake. So it will not be like it's going here and it's going to stop where the table ends and then it's going to go vertical. No, it'll jump. So it'll go far from the edge, as if somebody's running, running, and at the edge one jumps down. So it doesn't go. In this review, I'm not going to use pen and I'm going to not be marking the things. I'll be doing that in the next review, and I hope you will be able to understand what I'm commenting on the video right away. So if it's moving like this, it's not going to apply brake. You can see you are doing some slow in, so the spacing is getting closer here, which is not feasible. So it's going to keep moving and is going to jump out. So it's not going to stop and go down, it's going to jump out. It's going to make something like this, to do something like this. So if you want to make it enter here, so you should just put your plank somewhere here, so that it's moving, and then with that momentum it takes off from that plank and then shoots down. The other thing that we discussed in the planning also, that in this exercise the recommendation is that the ball starts with its own energy, so with a squash and stretch as if it's alive. So we didn't do that. Maybe you didn't listen to that comment or you didn't understand, or I might have given you an option that if you don't want to use that, you want to go away from that rule, then at least there should be some rhyme and reason for the ball to start moving. It's just moving without any reason, and it's moving fairly quick, so it's not digestible, it's not convincing the audience. See? So the other thing was that maybe the plank is slanting and the ball is kept here and then starts rolling, but safer is to because we want to practice that stretch and squash thing also, so the start should be with a stretch and squash. So maybe it squashes and then jumps into the tub. All right, the other thing was that, as we discussed also, and it's mentioned in PDF also, that the time the ball takes to come from top to bottom, this is the chance with an animator to define the size of the space. If it's the size is very small, maybe it's from a table, so it's going to reach down fairly quickly, so it's going to be very quick move. If it's coming from a 4-story building, so it's going to take huge amount of time. Zoom. So we want to show something large, so we make it slow motioned, a monster or something. We want to make it small rat, it's quick. So here is the chance for you to define, to tell the audience that how big it is. So the challenge here was that this is a basketball and this is 12 feet. So you have to convince that it's 12 feet. It's coming from 12 feet. So I think maybe the timing can be slightly more. The time taken to reach here can be slightly more. It's giving me an impression. You don't have to be very accurate and physics kind of calculation, but general senses should be convinced that this is this much space. It's 12 feet, like it's coming from our roof of a single story. Okay, otherwise I can see a good, I should tell you one thing, that looking at the first attempt after planning, this overall is very good. It needs, in any way it needs comments from mentor, but otherwise it's a very good attempt in the first go. So we are now going to the next stage where I'm going to give you comments and then you will reach the final stage. Here the slow out is fine. I'm not having any much problem in that. After that, in the tub you have kept the spacing fairly equal. That is also okay. Only thing is the ball should be touching the tub here. Now after that, okay, let me not go into detail. I was telling you the overall impression. One was this thing that is hitting my eye first. The second thing is that the ball suddenly gains speed after this hit. After this hit, it looks like that it has suddenly gained speed out of something, nowhere, without any reason. That's something not digestible. Look at it again. See that. These are the two major things. Now let's go into detail. All right. So here we had reached this point. After this, I see some zigzag in the path. I expect the path should be tracked. You know the techniques of tracking, arc tracking and all those things. So what we see here is, see, it has taken off, and after this, another important thing, it seems to be gaining the spacing. Look at this spacing and look at this spacing. It cannot gain the speed. There cannot be acceleration against the gravity. So it shows that it has got some motor. It has got some, it's like a rocket or missile which is having some engine with which it's accelerating in the air. Otherwise, if this is the spacing here at the takeoff, next spacing cannot be more than this. It should be lesser than this because it's moving against the gravity. Now I see the path deviating. It's shooting up, then down, then up. I don't see it in one arc. And I see a sudden slow in here. Look at this spacing and then look at this spacing. The spacing has suddenly reduced. Alright, again look at this spacing and look at this spacing. It is type of slowing out here. So after this spacing, it's gaining speed. So we'll have to be very careful when we are spacing the thing. There should be some reason of slowing out or slowing in. In this might be you might have a reason that okay, it's going up and so it has to slow in. Fine. But I see a sudden slow in here. Look at this spacing. This is more than the earlier and this is less than the earlier. So there cannot be non-uniform spacing. If there is slow in, slow out, it has to be uniform. There has to be a reason of slowing in and slowing out, and there has to be a rhythm, a uniformity in it. There cannot be abrupt ki suddenly it becomes more and then small and more and small. And again I see some weird path. Look at this. Suddenly there is increase in spacing. That's another thing. And then again less spacing. But it is also giving me a zigzag path. after it deviates in a direction which I'm not very sure, because I'm not very sure about the path. See, this path is not very clear, so I don't know exactly in which direction it's going to shoot out. And the most important thing that comes now, which we pointed out in the general look, that it gains speed after this. Look at this spacing and then look at this spacing. Suddenly gained speed, which is not convincing. If you want it to have so much speed that it reaches this pipe, so this first shooting out has to be at that speed. The first spacing has to define the speed. That has to be the maximum spacing, because it's going against gravity, so it'll just slow in later on. Now the thing that we had planned was that your ball is going to gain speed here, because you wanted to make it a spring elastic. So now you are animating it without it. Maybe you are thinking that you will do it later on, but without that your senses will not work. You will have to do it now to help your senses make the decision that how fast it's going to go and at what speed it has to go. So what actually you wanted to do was that it is going to get into it, so it has to cushion here. There has to be some hold, 2-3 frames or whatever, what type of that spring action you wanted. So it has to get into it, slow in, then slow out. This is what you wanted. It has to go in, there has to be some hold, so it has to slow in, it has to then slow out. So I don't see that. You should do that. Maybe you are finding some difficulty in that rig or something. Initially you can do it with the ball, it's going into a spring, a force, and then going out. Then you can make a simple rig. It's not that difficult. Alright, after that, so that spring is going to define at what speed it shoots. Then you will have to take care of the path and also the spacing. Spacing has to be very disciplined, slow in, slow out, whatever. It cannot be zigzag or slowing in, slow out, abrupt differences in the spacing. Now once it enters the pipe, alright, you have kept it fairly uniform, that's okay. Once it enters the tube, you keep the spacing fairly uniform. My only concern is that once it enters, I see a sudden reduction in the spacing. Maybe you want to show a lot of friction, but you can keep the spacing inside the pipe fairly equal to the spacing with which it entered the pipe. That's going to convince the audience. After this, here there will be some amount of slow out. Fine. Then in the tub you will keep the spacing almost similar, almost same. And then when it shoots, it's shooting against gravity, there has to be slow in. I again see an increase in speed here, which is not convincing me. It has to slow in, then slow out. It's like a bouncing ball. So to simplify, you can just slow in, slow out in y-axis, and the x remains almost uniform, constant. Again, I see something wrong in the path here. You should arc track it. It has to be a parabolic thing because it's like a bouncing ball. And I also see suddenly a reduction in spacing before it hits. It's not possible. When the ball hits the ground, the last spacing is the maximum. And when it bounces back, again I find something wrong here. See, it bounces back, and then it reaches a peak kind of thing where the y is just slowing in, and then it gains speed. What I see is, I find this spacing to be the maximum, and again the spacing is reduced here. This is maximum, this is less than that, which is again not convincing me. So I want it to be like a bouncing ball. It has to slow in at the top and then slow out. Here again I find this part is okay, but after that, see, what we feel is that okay, it's slowing in here, but after that the ball decides to touch that, you know, tub, so it suddenly moves there. This move is abrupt. It was slowing in here, but now it suddenly moves towards that. It's like a push in that direction without any reason. And this spacing is more than this. This spacing is more than this. And it touches the corner. After that, it should be deflecting in some other direction, but it's going back up. Not convincing again. I feel when it's touching this corner, it might be, you know, if it's touching here, might move somewhere here or something like that. Moreover, suddenly the spacing is reduced. If it's touching it at this speed, I think it's going to bounce back at fairly equal spacing, slightly less than that. It's suddenly too much reduced. And then you are having some kind of slow out, which I think again almost okay. Okay, then it's bouncing ball kind of thing. You should be expert in that. That's okay. I hope you got my idea in the overall game. You just revise it, and I think we should be nailing it down by the next review. By the next review, I feel that you should be done with all these things, and I will be just dealing with the stretch and squash and your rotation, how you make decision of stretch and squash and where to put rotation. Whenever it's alive, it's stretch and squash. Then you can make it roll also, to, you know, like in the end it's just rolling, then you don't have any stretch and squash at that moment when it's rolling. It's a very creative decision. You will make it yourself. All right, take care.